Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with comics creator, author, artist Sarah Davidson. Sarah, thank you for joining.
Of course, happy to be here.
Glad to have you. Looks like you have some lovely craft organization space happening here. There's some really organized thought, I think, going into some creation. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting.
Yeah, I'm definitely like a super organized, like type A personality. My whole life is run on spreadsheets and organization and stuff.
Same, absolutely. You and I could have a really good time cleaning up a space, organizing. I think that would totally work. Absolutely. Listeners out there will know you for Jackson's Wilder Adventures, Volume 1, and now Volume 2 coming in June, as well as work on Princess Guinevere. Any works there that you'd like to mention that I left out?
Those are my two current published works. I'm also currently working on Jackson Book 3, and I have a
Nice.
couple of middle grade graphic novels that will be coming out through Random House for over the next couple of years.
We love the middle grades graphic novels as well. Love that. Yeah. We were talking about teaching and the range that I've worked with, but graphic novels in middle grades, such a wonderful spot to work in.
It really is. There's just something so important and charming about like the middle grade demographic. I think, especially in comics, like there's so much change going on in
Hmm.
like a middle schooler's life that it's just such a fun place to work in and write in. And you can
Yeah,
tell some really compelling and important stories in middle grade.
absolutely, absolutely. And those early years in reading, of course, very foundational as well. What was the foundation for you? What led you to comics and storytelling and arts?
Oh gosh. I am one of those people that I've been just like drawing since literally before I can remember. My mom was an artist herself, and she would do like watercolor paintings and illustrations and stuff. And so I just grew up with it. I think the first comic I drew was, first grade, like just drawing little comic
Mm.
strips like Calvin and Hobbes type things. So it's just always something that's been part of my life and always something that I knew I wanted to do. It was not really something I ever thought I would actually get to do as my job, like professionally. The fact that I get paid to draw comics is literally the dream. But it's definitely something that I felt like has always been part of my life.
Cool. I'm a big reading and literacy person, but I know that Jackson's Wilder Adventures also has kind of a STEM focus, curiosity about the world around us. What inspired you to fold some of those ideas into the story?
So the whole concept of the book was inspired by my nephew Jackson. He was 5 years old at the time, and he's one of those kids that like knows the name of every kind of shark and every kind of dinosaur. And like he would just spout off all of these like scientific facts about whales. And I'm like, you're 5 years old. How are you smarter than all of us adults right now? Um, But he was at that age where he was like a really strong reader for his age. And so he was too old for like picture books, but not quite strong enough to start reading chapter books. And so I was like, why isn't there something in this gap where he wants more of a story? He wants to sit and actually like read something and get a narrative and learn and like, cool animal facts and things like that, because that's totally his jam. Um, but without just being like a list of facts or like a picture book. And so that was kind of my whole initial concept was like, well, if I was going to design a book for a kid exactly like my nephew, then this is what I would do. And it was very inspired by like Calvin and Hobbes and like Peabody and Sherman and, that sort of vibe.
Nice, I love that. I love that. How does he feel about being the inspiration for the book? Does he know?
He knows he loves it. He's so excited. He's 8 years old now, and he like he brings his book to school to show and tell, and he's like, "Look, I'm a comic book character."
Nice, nice. He could have his own book signings in class. I mean, that's what I would have done.
Exactly. Just be like, "Hey, I'll autograph my book for you. It's about me."
That's right. That's right. Now, if I'm a listener out there and I'm kind of thinking, what can I expect? This is a book about curiosity. There's some story involved. Anything that you'd like listeners to know about that aspect of it?
Yeah, I wanted the story part of it to feel relatable to a young kid and like maybe help them with a little bit of emotional awareness, like dealing with a lot of similar issues, but in like a lighthearted and fun way. It's not like a, you know, here's how to handle your emotions kind of a book. It's like here's Jackson, who he's maybe a little immature and a little quick to judge, and he's got normal kid issues. His dad is not a good cook and makes him like a super gross leftover casserole with weird things in it. And he's like, I don't want to eat this. I wish I was a wild animal. I could go out into nature and never eat gross things ever. And then he and his imaginary friend Erwin the Thylacine go out into nature and learn about genuinely gross things that animals eat. And it just like changes his perspective a little bit. And he's like, actually, dad's leftover casserole is probably not that bad.
Nice, nice. And I love the vocabulary I'm hearing already, Phyllocene. So folks out there can go and look that word up and check that out. So it sounds like there's some nice folding in of these concepts with the story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted it to feel like you were just reading a fun story about fun things, and in the process, you also learn cool animal facts and little sciencey tidbits and, you know, make learning and reading fun.
Why not? Why not? I love that idea. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you're a very organized spreadsheet kind of person. So that leads me to a question I can tuck in here about that artistic process for you. Do you have a similar pattern of creating, or are you a little more abstract in that way?
Even in my art, I'm very methodical. Like I
Nice.
have a very specific process that I go through. Like, I know some creators who it's like they'll do a little bit of pencils and then they'll hop and do some inks and then go back to pencils and maybe color a couple of pages. And well, I'll do one panel on this page and then one panel on this other page and come back to that later. It's like I start from step one and I complete every step in that process, and then I go back to the next part of the process and I complete every step. I have I built like an interactive progress tracker for myself. So it's like
Nice.
a fancy Google Sheets spreadsheet where like I can check a little box every time I complete a step of the process. And a little progress bar fills up so I can see what I'm accomplishing and what I'm getting done. I I feel like I have to do all of these things to keep myself on task, especially on like a long graphic novel project or when I'm working on
Hmm.
multiple projects at once, because it can be really difficult to keep yourself on track and to see, like, actually see the progress you're making when it's a bigger project. And like, there are some days you'll sit and work for 6 hours and feel like you didn't get anything done. So just being able to like check a little box every time I complete a step is very good for my brain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I've heard about creating a graphic novel is it's quite the long journey. It's a long haul kind of process, and so that makes total sense that you would want those checks along the way.
Yeah, just being able to visually see like I've made this much progress. I'm still have this much to go, but I'm on track. One of the books I'm working on with Random House right now, like, the Jackson books, they're all about 80 or 90 pages long. So they're not
Hmm.
quite as much of a process, like as much of an ordeal. But this next book I'm working on is going to be about 200 pages. And it's a different beast entirely. It's my first time doing something that long, and just having a visual aid really helps, and having something to keep me organized and on track has been very valuable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll mention here for listeners that are wanting to go and check out, Paper Cuts is the publisher of the Jackson series. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Cool, cool. Now, talking about this long range planning does make me think about the fact that you've created a series. There are two books, you're working on a third. So, I love a good series book. What's that process been like of unfolding a story across multiple volumes?
It's been really interesting. There's a lot to balance and a lot of things that I didn't necessarily consider, like sort of going into it. I always kind of knew I wanted Jackson's Wilder Adventures to be a series, just because I had so many ideas for like these little mini story arcs. Um, and the series is set for 3 books, and I'm like, I have a whole list of like other scenarios we could still do if it kept going. But every book is like 2 little mini stories together that kind of relate to each other. And so picking, all right, which 2 stories go together, like what works well together, making sure I'm not like repeating myself, like visiting the same location multiple times, or I have too many animals that are too similar. As I was writing book 2, I had to revise a couple of times because I was like, oh, every critter I'm picking for this story is like a little rodent critter. Like I need to vary things up a bit, have something cooler and more exciting. So just sort of logistically planning out the stories and the critters and the locations has been an interesting challenge. And then just, all of the research that goes into everything that goes into these books too has been more than I think I expected it to be.
Yeah. There's a lot of complexity there for sure.
Yeah, luckily I've been consulting with a wildlife ecologist. Her name is Kelly Zimmerman. She just got her PhD, which is very exciting. But she has been so insanely helpful. I'll be like, hey, I
Nice.
need an idea for an animal who's like a really good dad. Who's like a really good dad? And she's just got it. She's like, oh, here are some amazing, great dads in the animal kingdom.
It's cool. What a great resource.
Yeah, she's been fantastic.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about that process. I imagine that saves a little bit of time in revision as well. If you're going through very strategically, I would imagine that you probably catch a lot of those like flows of logic and some of those things that sometimes people have to go back and fix. Is that true?
I feel like it is. I on across like multiple projects I've worked on, I almost never get like big sort of like continuity revisions like that.
It's
Um,
cool.
so that's been kind of nice. Like I know like different creators have different experiences with that, but I have almost never had to do significant revisions. So it just all kind of comes together.
Yeah, love that. Love that. If I'm a listener out there and I want to see what's next, if I want to find out more, if I want to make sure that I'm tapped into the world of Jackson's adventures as well as the graphic novels for middle grades that are on the way, where would be some places that I might go?
So currently my only social media is Instagram. So I'm just Sarah Davidson Art on Instagram. And I try and keep up with that and like share exciting news and updates and artwork and all that jazz. Um, and then, following Paper Cuts, they'll also announce like any new Jackson's Wilder Adventure things. And on their website, on just the Paper Cuts website, they'll post like sort of related ancillary materials. So you can
Hmm.
get like a teaching guide for Jackson's Wilder Adventures that will like teach kids how do you read a comic, and it sort of goes into like the scientific theory of like, okay, propose a hypothesis and then see if that comes true, and sort of tying it into an educational curriculum for like elementary school, which is very cool.
Awesome, awesome. I was on a podcast as a guest about a week or two ago talking about comics in the classroom. And that's one of the things, if you're a listener out there and you don't know this, there are uh, teaching guides that are available for a variety of books. So glad to hear that there's one readily available for this series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like something like Jackson, where it's fun and educational, I feel like is such a good fit for a classroom or a school library where that kind of thing is, encouraged and, you know, let kids have fun, read comics, learn stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. It should be fun. It should be fun. Well, did we miss anything in the talk through that you want to make sure to share before we close out? I always like to make sure we hit every stone and make sure everything's unturned.
The only other thing that I like to point out really about Jackson's Wilder Adventures is between each of the main story chunks, I also have like little puzzles. So as you're reading the book, like every 8 or 10 pages or so, there's like a word puzzle or an activity page or something like that. Someone once referred to them as brain breaks, and I love
Nice.
that. So, if your kid is, doesn't have the longest attention span in the universe or something like that, then it's not just like 80 pages of reading. It's like you read 8 pages and it's like, oh, let me do this fun little word puzzle or let me do this cute little maze. So it's just another way to like engage kids who maybe have shorter attention spans or can't sit and read like a whole comic book in one sitting.
Love it. Very thoughtful and wonderful design feature too. And what a great way just to make sure the dopamine is flowing as you go.
Yes. Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah, it's been great chatting with you. Glad to have you back anytime. Glad to talk middle grades, elementary graphic novels, or anything that you're creating at any level of readership, and many, many things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was really great.